Wilfred Whistles. The Culdee Fell Mountain Railway had just welcomed 3 new engines. While Lord Harry was proving to be a handful, Alaric and Erica had settled in nicely. They were quiet engines, but were well-mannered and hard-working. Ernest and Wilfred were glad of the help. The new engines helped take the strain off their couplings, while Culdee and Shane Dooney were away. Not long after his arrival, the other engines noticed Alaric would tense up whenever it was his turn to go out. His smile vanished, and he was short with his coach and crew. "I can't understand it," Erica confided to Ernest. "He was always so chipper in the workshop, and didn't have a bad thing to say the whole way here." Ernest pondered. Perhaps he's still getting used to his new surroundings. It can take time for your new home to truly feel as such." Erica had to agree, but still felt there was something Alaric wasn't letting on to. One day, Alaric sat at the first station, waiting for clearance to head up the mountain. He wasn't steaming well, and his crew were doing all they could to strengthen his fire. He glanced nervously at the passengers mulling about the platform. Must be brave, he told himself. "I can do it, I think." At that moment, he heard whistling, but not of the steam variety. Wilfred arrived with the truck and backed onto the loop to let Alaric pass. He had a habit of whistling as he went about his work, so much so that Ernest had dubbed him the musical engine. Wilfred loved whistling. Alaric, on the other rod, didn't think so. "Must you do that?" grunted Alaric. "What's the harm in a little whistling, youngster?" smiled Wilfred. "You've got a perfectly good whistle fixed to your dome. Use that if you must." Scolded Wilfred. "That whistle is for signalmen and emergencies only, yeah? This is just my musical rhythm whistle. A little tune while you work isn't so bad." "Yeah? Well, it's childish," snapped Alaric. "I'd have thought an old engine like you would be past that nonsense." He gave a sharp blast of his whistle and snorted off. Wilfred took no notice. He went to shunt the truck away, whistling all the while. Alaric did not have an easy journey. Rain began to fall as he puffed through Scarlowy Road, and by the time he reached Devil's Back, a fierce gale began to blow. The train had to wait out the weather before forging on to the summit, and the passengers grew impatient and cross. Alaric heard none of their complaints. He stared silently at the last stretch of line, with the winds howling and thunder cackling. "It's only weather. Nothing to fear," he muttered nervously. "We'll be all right. We'll be all right." At last, there was a break in the weather. With skies clear for the time being, Alaric forged ahead. He glanced nervously down either side of the mountain and gulped. In his distraction, he'd slowed down considerably. "Come on, boy," urged his driver. "What's the holdup? You've got plenty of steam left." "Plenty of steam," he stammered. Nothing to it." And he went only as fast as he dared. The passengers were not happy when they reached the station. "We won't have nearly enough time to take in the summit." The station master assured them he would find a solution, and the crew examined Alaric as he sat at the platform. "Nothing of the sorts," said the fireman, scratching his head. "You're sure you're all right, boy?" Of course," Alaric replied, trying to smile bravely. "It couldn't be better." The crew shrugged to each other and headed for the cafe. Recently, the mountain railway had been having issues with vandals. Some took stone slabs and tried sledding down the line, and some knocked down fence posts, which led to stray sheep on the line. Of particular worry was the disappearance of gradient posts. Without these in place, drivers wouldn't know if the line was going to get steeper and wouldn't be able to give their engine enough power to make the climb. The gradient post at Skarloey Road had recently vanished, but had been rediscovered and moved by strong winds. Alaric was making his way down the mountain, but was not keeping a good lookout. He hated rolling backwards and had his eyes shut tight. "Soon be over, soon be over," he whispered to himself. The station came into view. Then, "Yikes!" shouted the driver. There was the gradient post, strewn across the tracks. He screwed the brakes on, but Alaric wasn't paying attention and couldn't stop in time. He hit the post and with a bump came off the line. The guard had braked the coach to a halt and it stayed upright, but Alaric sat crooked across the line. He felt very sorry for himself. I'm sorry," he stammered to his crew. His driver shook his head. "Well, better to come off here than at the viaduct. I shudder to think of what the outcome of that might have been." Alaric was thankful that hadn't been the case. Thankfully, the Skarloey Road station could be reached by road, and a bus was called to take the passengers home. Alaric sat sad and cold, waiting for someone to come rescue him. He knew at once who had been sent. Echoing around the mountain and getting closer was a cheerful whistling. Wilfred pulled into the loop, pushing the truck. The men set to work getting Alaric back on the rails. "Penny for your thoughts?" asked Wilfred. Began Alaric. "No, I can't say. It's silly," he finished, gazing back up at the mountain. "If I didn't know better, and I think I do," chuckled Wilfred, "I'd say you're frightened of something of mountainous proportions," and he winked. "It sounds ridiculous," sighed Alaric. An engine afraid of heights when that's exactly what he was designed for? "You act like you're the only one it's ever happened to." "You mean you?" "Certainly," continued Wilfred. "It's a daunting task, even if you're not afraid. But fear can be overcome, youngster. There are ways to keep yourself calm." Alaric's eyes widened. "So that's why you whistle." Wilfred smiled. "When I was being built, the men in the workshops whistled all day long. I remember my first trip up the mountain. I was terrified. I thought if I had a small distraction, it wouldn't seem so daunting. I whistled the tunes I remembered from the old days, and it nipped the problem right in the bud. I've not been scared for years, but the song still put me in mind for my younger days. Perhaps," he finished, "it might be worth it for you to try." Soon, Alaric had been re-railed and Wilfred took the workmen home. As he began to roll back, Alaric felt himself tense up. He remembered Wilfred's words and began whistling a small melody. He relaxed at once and made it back to the sheds quicker than ever before. Over the next few days, the others noticed an immediate change in Alaric's temperament. He was cheerful to everyone he met and whistled all day long. The engines were quite amused with his sudden change of heart regarding whistling. Even Culdee, who learned the story upon her return, found it funny. "Keep it up, Wilfred," she chuckled, "and soon we'll have our own mountain engine choir." Alaric and Wilfred could only laugh in agreement.